Every system has a flaw, and so before we can consciously work within the confines of a system, be it the work with Byron Katie or capitalism or the family system, we have to go through the process of sympathy, then antipathy. And in this case, the flaw or antipathy of the work is the discrepancy with which Byron differentiates the individual and what's going on in the mind and the other and the rest of the world.
My husband said something very unkind. And
we just met him and he seemed so lovely. I can't imagine him doing that. He came in with Borges. He's a kind, friendly man.
I've never known him to be unkind. I don't even think it's in him. But let's say he was just very unkind, insulting, and so. And I didn't say anything. I was just, I was just hurt. And then he comes in the next morning and he says, "Good morning, honey," with this big smile on his face. And I give him the look, and I don't speak to him. And he's all happy morning guy. And I am punishing. Okay. So why am I punishing him? In my mind's eye, I see the Stephen of yesterday. I see yesterday's Stephen.
Yes.
Now, am I punishing the right man?
No.
No.
This guy's innocent.
Yes.
He's just come in. So,
yes.
do you...
So, that's insane.
Yeah, it is.
And that hurts me. And guilt, I can't think and believe, I refer to them sometimes as Post-its. He is this, he is that, she is this, she is that. So I cannot put all those Post-its on a person without questioning them, because if I am unkind to Stephen, he says, "Good morning, honey," and I'm unkind to him, then I'm going to experience guilt because I'm believing something against my nature. Now, that will cause a kind of defense to go up.
So when someone is doing the work with Byron Katie about someone else, let's say someone's behaved greedily or cruelly, etc., and they have the statement, "This person shouldn't be cruel to me," Katie will say, "But they are cruel. So it is insane to say that they shouldn't be cruel. In fact, one should say that they should be cruel as part of the flip." Now, the inconsistency here is that Katie is also part of reality. Her mind is part of reality. And she is saying that she is behaving coldly in response to a cold act yesterday. But she shouldn't be behaving coldly because yesterday doesn't exist. And the reality is that if we are dwelling on yesterday as part of reality, that yesterday does exist because we exist and we are part of reality dwelling on yesterday, and time is part of our experience. But what Katie's argument boils down to is that when other people are crazy, it's something that we need to accept because they are part of reality. But when we are crazy, it's something we shouldn't accept because it's insane. And it is that discrepancy that says that I'm not part of reality. Because if you understand the interconnected fabric of reality, you cannot apply a different standard to oneself as part of reality and the other as part of reality.
Me, if he says something, for example, or either way, I'm going to feel guilt. Now, why am I feeling guilt? Because I'm believing something that's out of time. I mean, it's you could say antiquated. I am out of my head, so out of my right mind. So
this is really the key. Is it possible for everyone else to be in their right mind and to be out of one's own mind, and to say that the only thing crazy in the entirety of reality is the self, which suggests that the self is not part of reality? Because if we accept time as part of reality, and we accept ourselves as part of reality, then we should be upset when we are upset. And we know that we should be upset when we are upset because it's our job to be upset. We are doing our job in the fabric of reality to be upset, just like the other person is doing their job to make an unkind remark. If you really accept reality unconditionally, it doesn't include upsetting every part or accepting every part of reality except oneself.
If I say or do anything toward another human being, let's say toward Stephen that morning, I'm going to feel guilt. And when you talk about 12-step programs, guilt is the food that addiction feeds on. We cannot get away with it. Guilt, what do you do with it? What do you do with it?
So it's also accepting guilt and accepting the fact that addictions feed on guilt, and accepting addiction if we are to accept all of reality.
Beings don't know what to do it. We don't all know what to do with it. But I can identify what I'm thinking and believing about Stephen, and I can sit in myself and meditate in that situation where I did the thing I feel guilty over, and then see what comes of it. And I can go back when I'm of right mind, which it does.
So there's a right mind and a wrong mind in Katie, and the right mind is the good mind, and the wrong mind is the bad mind that I, as Katie, need to change.
It clears up if our mind is really open to what's true and what's not, and then I can.
There's also a distinction between the parts of self that are in the system and the parts of self that are outside the system, because the parts of ourself that are in the system as the victim of some form of cruelty have always and will always feel some sense of hurt, some sense of isolation, some sense of separation between them and the person who has been cruel to them. That's been going on in humanity for tens of thousands of years. Statistically speaking, if you take 100 people and you slap and insult 50 of them, and you courteously treat the other 50, statistically speaking, the 50 who have been hurt and slapped by one person will, both in the present and the future, be less open and more guarded with that person because they want to feel good and they want to avoid feeling bad. And their odds of feeling bad are higher with the person who slapped them yesterday than with the person who treated them well yesterday.
Go back and I can simply say, if I mean it, and it's integrity, so I do. I really look to myself. So I can say, sweetheart, you know, the way I looked at you this morning and I was short with you, and I want to apologize for that. I'm really sorry. And he doesn't say, what are you sorry? I mean, it's really not about him, is it? It's about me just saying out loud as a way. It's how the mind works for me to get it.
And what I see here is that there is always a part of us that is sorry to be in a suffering dynamic, either on the giving or the receiving end. But there's also another part of us that is seeking symmetry, that is seeking to balance pain with pain and joy with joy. And that's reflected in the part of the human ego that treats people badly who treat them badly and treats people well who treats them well. And if that part of us that treats people badly who treat us badly is part of reality, then it is as much a part of the human experience as the part of us that transcends the moment, that wishes we were in another play in which we were more evolved than we are, and another play in which the other person didn't slap them in the face or rape their daughter or whatever it is. There's also, in my exposure to the work so far, hasn't been deeply going into some of the most horrific issues, which is, for example, a rape and murder serial killer who rapes and murders is statistically much more likely to rape and murder again. That's the basis of putting them in jail. If someone who raped and murdered someone for fun was unlikely to rape and murder someone tomorrow, there'd be less of a compelling reason to put them in jail. But statistically speaking, the person who rapes and murders for fun has the same program involved that will see them raping and murdering for fun again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. And so the question becomes, do you want to live in a reality where 10 girls are raped and murdered, or 100 girls are raped and murdered by this individual? And if you lack the technology to transform the desire to rape and murder because of the culture's current level of development, then one of your options is to imprison the person who rapes and murders, because that will calm the cycle of violence by meeting violence with violence. And so if you look at dynamics on a global scale, if Hitler invaded England, and yesterday, but today he didn't invade England, today he invaded Poland, and then the day after that, would Katie apologize to him as a world leader for being upset at the loss of the country? Or would she say, no, Hitler's in a good mood today, he just invaded 2 countries, but now he's in a happy mood, he's not invading anyone right now. so let me treat him with kindness. This is one of the, instead of force, and similarly, if we look at the stalemate of the Cold War, if Russia had had distinctly inferior force, or if the U.S. had, would the statistical odds of violence on a worldwide scale go up or go down? And that's a science of statistics. And so it's somewhat different to talk about one's husband, who is generally nice, who had a moment of being in a bad mood, and someone who has a very high statistical probability of escalating pain to a point where the virus of pain spreads amongst more and more people, who again will statistically escalate pain and violence in response to pain without being protected.
Into my cells. That's why forgiveness is the ultimate healer.
Yes. These, both of the systems similarly are within the 12-step philosophy. Step 8 is about forgiveness.
So we'll stop here, but we'll stop saying it is possible because we have not done that particular experiment. It is possible that Hitler might have invaded one country and then been all happy and smiles. I think he said, I'm not going to invade another one again. It is possible that a drug addict who steals to get drugs isn't going to steal again. And it's also possible, within the frame of rationality, to say that the world that treated an individual, such as Hitler or someone who commits crimes to get drugs, has not been kind to that person, because all addictions have an underlying degree of psychological pain and trauma that fuel the addiction. There's a pain that the individual cannot face on their own, and so they use a compulsive pain management system that they depend on to avoid the pain they don't know how to face. And we don't know how to face pain in our cult because we don't teach anyone at any stage of development in our cult how to manage pain. We don't teach its source, we don't teach how to heal it, and so there is a lot of pain that a lot of people do not know how to deal with, and so there are a lot of people who turn to addiction as a way of dealing with pain. And having invented or created a mechanism to cessate pain for a short period of time, then there is a incredibly high level of attachment to getting that pain needs met. Now, if the addiction is violence, there needs to be more violence. If the addiction is a drug, there needs to be more drugs. It certainly speaks to the fact that the drug war doesn't work. You can't have a war on a substance. And it also speaks to the fact that if you block someone's pain management strategy, you are perceived by the addict as a threat to their pain, meaning that you're standing in the way of the thing, the behavior, or the substance that they have found in an inadequate cult to protect them from pain. So that's part of a rationale where one could say that the cult is being unkind and cruel and starting a pattern of abuse towards the person. So the cult could take an attitude of apologizing for not protecting that individual from pain and trauma in childhood, and not teaching technology for healing that pain, and keeping the entire topic of childhood trauma taboo and unconscious as a way of perpetuating it.